Hey, I'm Shane Varco, the Executive Director of the Dalgarno Institute. Welcome to our Dalgarno Institute's no-brainer resiliency building sessions. Hey guys, welcome back. This is our Improve Your Mental Health Without Drug Use session, part 1. Anyone here ever done the Ice Bucket Challenge? You know that those are fundraising events that happen on an annual basis for ALS or Lou Gehrig's disease. The ALS Association have got a mantra, a world without ALS, a shocking disease, really awful, and it really does diminish people who have it, and it's shocking. Look, they've raised arguably over $100 million already globally, and it's fantastic what they're doing. But is ALS still here? Does the disease still continue? Well, the answer is yes, it does. So, do we give up? Do we stop? Even though all that money's been raised and all that research has been done, do we stop because it hasn't been fixed, hasn't been changed? No, we don't. We don't give up. We keep working until we get a breakthrough. Now, this awful disease, this debilitating disease, robs you of movement, coordination, proper speech, then pain comes and uncontrollable actions emerge. Sadly, it diminishes your capacity, your ability, and even your dignity towards its latter stages. What's interesting though is we know another thing that will do that quicker than almost anything else, particularly at your age. That's drug use. Can do all those things real fast. It's interesting, illicit drug use is a key factor in poor mental health outcomes. Social and Economic Benefits of Improved Mental Health Productivity Commission issues paper of January 2019 really highlighted some of the key issues that we're not going to go into a depth, but some of the key issues that are in play around this. And the significant mental health issues that are growing and plaguing our culture are continuing to cause huge problems in our society. And the costs are quite breathtaking. For example, costs of mental ill health in our community include resources expanded on human services. In other words, resources have to be deployed to deal with the issue, the growing issue. Reduction in incomes and living standards, so people they're not earning as much and their living standards are dropping. And of course, the intangible costs like lower social participation, pain and suffering, stigma and discrimination. All those things are a really serious problem in the mental health space. But illicit drug use only exacerbates and adds monumentally to this ongoing problem. So, chicken or egg? Mental health issues are a growing problem, and tragically it seems drug use may be both a chicken and egg when it comes to this messy space. By chicken we mean for the developing brain trying to deal with stress, anxiety and sadness by using illicit drugs can be what lays the egg, using the metaphor, of mental health conditions. Check out this video on marijuana and mental health issues and how the brain reacts to cannabis. Very interesting.
Dopamine transporters in the presynaptic neuron are not the only things that control how much dopamine is released or how often. Other nearby neurons also play important roles in regulating neural signals. For example, an inhibitory neuron near the dopamine presynaptic cell can reduce the amount of dopamine delivered to the synapse by releasing the neurotransmitter GABA. Inhibitory GABA signals change in response to local brain activity, adjusting the amount of dopamine released by stimulated dopamine neurons. Endocannabinoids are neurotransmitters that can indirectly affect dopamine signals by modifying the activity of other neurotransmitters, such as GABA. Endocannabinoids, like dopamine, bind to specific receptor proteins located on the surface of some cells. Depending on its current level of activity, the presynaptic dopamine neuron can produce endocannabinoid molecules. These molecules bind to cannabinoid receptors on the adjacent GABA neuron, reducing the amount of GABA it releases. Inhibiting GABA neurons in this way boosts the dopamine signal in the reward synapse. Endocannabinoid and other mechanisms that regulate dopamine activity help the brain develop, learn, adapt, and navigate a complex world. Endocannabinoids are molecules that closely resemble the main chemical in the cannabis plant, delta-9 tetrahydrocannabinol, or THC. Because THC is so similar to the brain's own endocannabinoids, such as anandamide or 2-AG, smoking marijuana directly affects the brain of the user. When someone smokes marijuana, THC molecules quickly reach the brain. There, THC competes with the brain's endocannabinoids to bind with cannabinoid receptors on neurons that regulate dopamine activity. Among other effects, THC reduces the release of GABA in the striatum. This reduction, in turn, causes nearby dopamine neurons to release more dopamine. Increased dopamine release produces the positive feelings or the marijuana high. Marijuana use can have far-reaching consequences in the user's brain. THC can activate cannabinoid receptors found throughout the brain, altering healthy communication within the brain and with the rest of the body. This can affect emotions, movement, learning, memory, and decision-making. Using marijuana frequently, especially during adolescence, overstimulates the reward system and can change the brain's actual wiring. Such use can lead to addiction and other mental illnesses, and even lower a person's IQ.
Back to the chicken and egg analogy. By egg, we mean that people can be already struggling with these persistent mental health conditions and decide to self-medicate with a substance. And that's always a concern. I get it, guys. Sometimes we're feeling anxious or depressed or out of sorts, and we're really struggling with it, and we don't want to talk about it, or we don't know how to talk about it, and so we think, oh, I might just try and self-medicate that and pretend it's not a problem. And that's always a really bad call. I know, a tough one, but it's a really bad call. And this may or may not calm you down or pep you up, whatever the issue may be, but it doesn't last and only hatches more mental health problems. Again, staying with that analogy of chicken and egg, it just hatches more problems. You have a temporary fix and a permanent problem. As we said before in our previous sessions, I'm feeling better, but I'm only getting worse. What we want to do right now is look at a model called the CHIME Mental Health Recovery Model. Now, this was used both in the mental health sector, but it's also been adapted and used in the drug use recovery sector. Nobody deliberately seeks to actively worsen their health. No one says, today I'm going to wake up and go and make my health and my life more miserable and worse. No one does that deliberately. But with mental health, we need to be even more careful what we put into our system when trying to address the issues that present, the issues that we may be struggling with. We've really got to be careful, guys. So what is a better option? Rather than substance use or medication straight away, we want to introduce you to the CHIME model, C-H-I-M-E. As I said before, it's used in the mental health sector, but it's been adapted and used in the drug use recovery sector as well. So CHIME, C, connectedness, H, hope, I, identity, M, meaning, and E, empowerment. And you'll notice this bounces out of a lot of the earlier stuff that we talked about on our wheelbarrow and our resiliency rope. So these are common issues and common themes throughout the sector, and we're aware of that. So we want to talk about, helping you get a grip, as it were. And I want to use that analogy because, the old saying is, get a grip, man. In other words, you kind of losing control, and you want to arrest that loss of control and put it back into play in a safe and healthy and functional way. So getting a grip on key essentials that will help you not only hold to good practice, which is important, but can also help you and your friends get a grip too. And this is what's really important. It's not just about us. We do this together. And again, connectedness is helpful. Healthy connectedness is helpful to different people and hope. So again, the CHIME model, here's represented: hope, identity, meaning, connectedness, and empowerment. But also, we've talked about this before, some of these key connection points. Family. Now, we know not every family's great. We get that, guys. It's not what we hoped it would be. And we're not talking about parents who love you enough to set boundaries and discipline you. We're talking about careless environments and boundaryless environments. They're the ones that aren't helpful. They're the ones that cause the most harm. But family, education, and again, sometimes we hate, school sucks. I wasn't great at school. And that learning process, book learning process, wasn't great for me, but education is so important. I've learned so much more, and I value education more highly with each year that goes by, and can't say enough about that. So the experience of education and learning is important as well. Community, remember we talked about that. Community is really important. Having a safe and healthy community, and we talked about sporting clubs, communities of faith. They're all solid communities that can be very helpful in helping you be resilient. Of course, a mentor and a coach. Now, as a younger person, hopefully that's your parents, but not always. And it's also good to have someone else on the side as well. Of course, meaning is in there, and we talked about our resiliency scripts and our resiliency maps to help you make and move forward. Developing your helping hand is really important. I think the CHIME model lends itself to this as well, guys. What are the 5 people in your network, in your connected space that are helpful and useful for you developing your resiliency, being a strong, growing, maturing, healthy person, and not a network that's leading you in the other direction, which is just not helpful. So we need trustworthy friends, really trustworthy friends, people that aren't going to say, hey man, let's do this, let's try that, and step you into places of illegality, of experimentation. These people aren't friends. They're just trying to help you, trying to get you to help them engage in stuff that's not useful. Positive parents or parent, really helpful. We hopefully got one of those in your life. It may be a grandparent, maybe an uncle or auntie. But a family adult member who cares about your well-being, cares about your development, not just Luna Park parent or a disengaged parent. Someone who really does care about you, all of you, not just part of you. Healthcare professional is always good. It might sound weird at your age, but having a doctor that is a really good doctor, cares about your health, that you can talk to about stuff is really important. Another trustworthy friend. Again, in the network, having trustworthy friends, because not everyone can be available, and so it's really good. And of course, we talk about a coach or a mentor, an older person that is quite in a mature space, perhaps even professional. It could be a teacher, it could be a mentor, it could be a leader of an organisation you're involved with, scouts or a youth group or whatever. But someone that does care about your well-being and care about your development as a person. So again, that model's in play. Now, it's interesting that in all this place, this connectedness, it's all good having friends and people and parents, but it's talking to them that matters. It's the talking, it's the engaging, it's the working through stuff together, thrashing it out, chatting it through, unloading, putting it on the table, all those terms we use, but really just investing in that communication and allowing others to invest in you. And what we know, we've talked about that previously, and we're going to reiterate it here, talking therapies are still one of the best ways to rewire your brain, but also help you emotionally process stuff. This video clip by Reach Out is really, really good, and it talks just the simple basics around talking therapies. It's a really good little insight into the basics of talking through stuff with people that really matter to help make a difference.
When you're going through a tough time, one of the best things you can do is to open up and talk about what's going on. But why is talking so effective?
Talking makes me feel less alone. It makes me feel like I'm not the only one overthinking everything.
It's not like I want someone to solve my problems for me. I just needed someone to listen, and I felt so much better after just letting it out.
Finding someone to talk to was a huge part of getting through a really tough time, and I wish I'd done it a lot sooner than I did.
Talking can provide stress relief and can lighten the load of a particular concern that someone might be having.
When someone opens up and talks about what's happening for them, they can sort of start to break down a problem into smaller parts, which can help to reduce that feeling of being overwhelmed.
If you're going through a rough time, finding someone that you trust to talk to is really important. Sometimes choosing someone outside of the situation can really help to alter your perspective and shed new light on an issue that's been troubling.
Visit reachout.com to find out more about dealing with tough times.
Now for the quote of the moment from a very famous gentleman by the name of Dr. Lloyd Jones. I really like this quote. Most of your unhappiness in life is due to the fact that you are listening to yourself instead of talking to yourself. Say it again. Most of your unhappiness in life is due to the fact that you are listening to yourself instead of talking to yourself. Now, hopefully the coach, teacher and or parent that's involved in leading you through this session will unpack that a bit for you, but just give you a quick little insight. Sometimes in our world where we're so driven by stimuli and our emotions are so wired and so pushed around, massaged, even intimidated or bullied into certain responses, our emotions start screaming at us, and we listen to those emotions and react to them. And what we should be doing is, as we've talked about before, and using that Rollo May quote that we've mentioned earlier, so our ability to overcome our anxiety is geared to the values that we have. So in other words, rather than listening to how I feel, I start talking into how I want to feel. And this is where talking therapies can help, because sometimes our inside voices that we're listening to aren't helpful, and we need some outside voices to give us objectivity. And this is where our values, our worldview, what we believe to be good, right and true, start to inform our feelings, not our feelings inform our worldview. And our conduct is directed by good decision making, not reactions to emotions. And that's why we need some objective help sometimes to work through that, and that's where talking therapies come into their own. So what about our script builder for today, our takeaways? This week, identify your helping hand network. So I want you to go away and I want you to identify who are your significant others and that hand we talked about. Who are your two friends, who are your mentor, who's your parent, who's your healthcare professional. These are going to be your go-to relationships that help you build your resiliency script and your bungee rope. We talked about that again earlier. So building your resiliency script and building your bungee rope. And these help with problem-solving skills, with persistence of will, and of course developing the hope, that positive expectation of good and the reasonable grounds for it. And they'll give you encouragement and wisdom and hopefully some support in that process. So identify those this week as you go forward, and see you next time.